Okay.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Garrison Board of Education special meeting Wednesday, July 29th, 2020. Dusty, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Jocelyn Apsello.
Here.
David Gelber.
Here.
James Hoke. Madeline Julian.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Matthew Spicer. And Sarah Tormey.
Here. Thank you. Okay, I'll now lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, moving right along. I'm going to go to President's remarks. I have a few things tonight. First, I wanted to thank the board for a very productive retreat this past Saturday. I appreciated everyone's contributions to the book discussions, as well as our conversations on board goals and district priorities for this coming year. On tonight's agenda, we are excited to welcome new teachers and thank our hardworking interim for his service. During his brief time with us, Lou helped with the hiring process. He worked on the reentry plans and schedules for this next year. I think he's accomplished a lot in his short time with us, and we wish him the best. We also want to thank Carl for his willingness to step into the role while we initiate an inclusive search process, one that welcomes parent, staff, and community input. We respect every administrator, teacher, staff member, parents' right to do what is best for their family during this challenging time. And I just want to take a moment to say that, in the coming months, I think we're going to continue to find ourselves in challenging situations as a school community. We're going to try and do our best. You're going to see some of that tonight, to problem solve for situations that none of us anticipated a year ago. We might disagree sometimes on how best to proceed with reopening, and we might feel upset about how other choices impact us as a community. Tonight, I'm asking that we all face these challenges with respect and compassion for our neighbors, our fellow parents, and our staff. We're going to hear about the plans for reopening tonight. We'll get to Carl's section. Try and pick this up and keep it short. The fact that we're at a place where we need multiple plans for the 2021 school year shows there's really nothing ideal about the situation we're in at the moment. Please know that we are working to meet the state guidelines. You'll hear that from Carl again tonight. We're consulting with counsel when necessary to ensure that our path forward is lawful. And we recognize there are a lot of unanswered questions. We're not going to have all the answers tonight. And it's important to hear your feedback as we continue to try and shape those answers. So as a board, we really value your input. We're thankful for every family who took the time to respond to the recent superintendent survey. We also want to thank the parents, teachers, staff, administrators, and board members serving on the 23-person reentry task force. This is a huge undertaking, as you'll see tonight. This task force has worked to address health and safety, social emotional concerns, and academic concerns that we have around reopening. I would ask that the community members in attendance tonight, please hold your comments until public comment or your questions, just because they might be answered during the course of the presentation. It is our policy not to respond during the meeting. This is to ensure that the answers we have are vetted and that we offer the best information we can provide. Please know we're going to get back to you with answers, and also know that we might not have answers yet, but we're doing our best to get there. So on that note, I think you've heard enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to Carl. Thank you.
You're muted, Carl.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a great summary of where we are at this point in time. I'm going to ask Ms. Callow if she could put up a slide presentation for us and help me as I take everyone through.
Carl, do you have the ability to enable me to screen
Yes.
share from where you're at? Okay.
Absolutely. Just give me one quick second.
Sure.
Okay, you are a co-host now, Ms. Callow.
Okay. And here we go. Let me go to slideshow. Okay.
Okay, so I thought it would be important that this evening I share with the board and our audience our progress towards creating and finalizing a reopening of school plan for the 2021 school year. Next. So although Sarah described some of this, let me just walk you through. We have a 23-member reopening school task force in Garrison. It includes parents, teachers, support staff, board members, as well as administrators. We began meeting in late June. We had 4 meetings and then in June and then 3 more in July. And the task force was guided by 3 major documents. The CDC, the Department of Health, and New York State Ed all have provided guidance on how to safely reopen schools. We submitted the task force submitted recommendations to me as well as the Board of Education. We are taking that information, synthesizing it, and that will be the information that our actual reopening school document will be based on. Next. So the survey that Sarah mentioned earlier went out to all Garrison families about 2 weeks ago, and we had a very strong response. 127 parents did respond. And here are some of the results. 56% of our parents said that they would send their children back to a full-time in-person school in September. 17% said they would not send their children back to school, and 29% at that point in time were still undecided. However, 67%, which is higher than the full-time in-person model, would send their children back to a 50% in-person hybrid model. And basically what that means is a model that half the students attend on certain days of the week and half of our students would attend on other days in the week, and they would rotate. Next. Also, we did ask about transportation, and we learned that 42% of our parents would use the district's bus transportation as long as social distancing measures were in place. What that means is students sitting 6 feet apart, unless they're siblings, and also every student and the driver on the bus wearing a mask. We also learned that 39% of our parents said they would not use district bus transportation and would be willing to drive their children to school and pick them up, and that would be helpful. And also 19%, are still undecided about this. Next. The task force had 3 subgroups, and we worked in 3 major areas. And let me speak about the first one, which is health and safety. And this was led by our school nurse, Melissa DeFonce, as well as Michael Twardy, our Director of Transportation and Facilities. The group covered topics such as health checks, and I'll just speak a little bit to each one. Health checks or health screenings is a requirement for all staff and all students to return to school. However, districts have some discretion in how they can implement that. So for example, you could set up a screening at the entrance of your school and screen every person before they come in. Or the more widely favored method is to have families and staff members self-screen at home, but then provide evidence when they arrive at school that they did in fact go through a health check. And the questions that would be asked, for example, for a parent or child are things such as, do you have any aches and pains? You need to do a temperature check above 100 degrees would be an indicator that you should not be in school. And a number of other symptoms such as, runny nose, loss of taste, things that we've heard over and over on the news, but those are the symptoms, of course, of COVID. The next area they looked at is social distancing, and this is an important one. We need to maintain social distancing on buses, in classrooms, on the playground, in the gymnasium, inside and outside of school. So how you accomplish that is something that takes a lot of thought and a lot of planning. The good news is we do believe with the square footage that exists here in the Garrison School that we could maintain 6 feet of social distancing with all of our students and staff. The next area that they looked at is health and hygiene. This is an important part of the process. Routines have to be in place. Hand sanitizers, the bathrooms have to be set up properly, stocked with of course soap, and whatever is needed to have students remain clean and healthy. Routines have to be in place. If you are about to eat lunch, you must wash your hands or at least use hand sanitizer prior. And all of that supplies needed to implement the system needs to be in place throughout the building. The next bullet talks about face coverings and PPE. Face coverings is not optional. It is a requirement from the bus to the school and even out on the playgrounds, unless you are more than 6 feet apart. And there are some allowances for students, of course, and staff to have a drink, for example. If you need to stay hydrated, if you're drinking water, obviously that would be allowed. For eating, you need to remove your face mask. But really all other times, it is required that you maintain face mask unless, for example, you were outdoors and sitting more than 6 feet apart. Then you could have a face mask break. Cleaning and disinfecting, this really is a simple, straightforward compliance category. We looked very closely at the detailed CDC guidelines as well as the Department of Health guidelines. Mr. Twardy is setting up systems where all of those requirements would be met. Daily cleaning, daily disinfecting. We've ordered additional supplies, additional equipment, a mister that disinfects doorknobs and desks and handles throughout the building. The next one is management of ill persons. This is an important component of the plan. And I'm going to ask Dusty Callow to just go to the next slide and I'll explain a little bit more. There is a lot of concern about, if we're in school, what if someone is symptomatic or what if someone becomes ill and exhibits symptoms of COVID-19? Well, there is a law in place, not specifically for COVID-19, but for any infectious disease. And I added that to the slide so you could see that we would need to follow Education Law 906. And basically, if we believe someone is symptomatic, potentially with COVID, immediately the nurse would be involved, take an assessment, and then if we believe the person could potentially have COVID, we would notify the Department of Health. The person has to be isolated. We would contact the home immediately and arrange for safe transportation from school. We would follow up and make sure that the child or the staff member has seen a doctor. And then afterwards, we would cooperate with the Putnam County Department of Health on contact tracing. They would take the lead, but we would support them in that process. Ms. Callow, the next one. The next subgroup was the social emotional well-being subgroup. And this committee was led by our school guidance counselor, Krista DiDiego, and we had also Miss Sue Hutter, our business administrator, sit on this committee with a number of other parents and staff members. So they talked about things such as communicating social emotional well-being as a priority. What I want to say as your superintendent is academics, of course, is very important, but what is more important is the social and emotional health of our students as well as our employees. And this is something that needs to be communicated clearly. There may be some adjustments to the academic piece of school because we need to make sure this is the highest priority. There is a lot of anxiety, of course, around returning to school, and that is something that needs to be supported as much as possible. The next bullet is establishing an SEL team to lead that implementation. This would be our guidance counselor, our school psychologist. We also have our district physician who is actually being appointed this evening. And our nurse would also be part of that team as well as administration. Prioritize SEL support before academics. I really spoke to this earlier, but it's worth emphasizing once again that even if, it may interrupt academics, if we think a child, for example, is experiencing anxiety, or is upset about school being different from what it was last year, that would definitely be our priority, to make sure that child felt comfortable. Even if they needed to miss some academics to be given that support, we would make sure that that happens. The next bullet is delivering a comprehensive developmental school counseling program. This is already in place, but we think that we need to alter it a bit. We should focus more on stress management are some of the ideas that I heard from our mental health professionals. This is already covered, like I said, but I think there will be a greater emphasis during what I anticipate will be a more stressful school year. The next bullet talks about a multi-tiered system of support. MTSS is the acronym. This is required, but we already have this in place. Our name for it at the school level is the Child Study Team. And typically the Child Study Team is a group of our educators and our administrator. And what they do is, if students are struggling academically, if students are struggling behaviorally, you go to this team, and this team will provide advice, support, and guidance on how to best help a child. I see it being used more this year for emotional support, if that is what we need to do. But the system is in place, and I believe it'll serve us well to support our children. Next, Ms. Callow. So this has come up quite a bit. The SED guidelines regarding tents. So there was an interesting article in the New York Times, I think last weekend, talked about the 1917 pandemic, when schools were using tents to get children outdoors as much as possible, because of course it is safer being outdoors. However, today in 2020, there are some more stringent guidelines in place, and I thought it would be worth communicating. In my research, here are some of the things that we need to comply with. First, if it is a temporary structure, which a tent would be considered temporary, you cannot have it up for more than 180 days. That would help us and see us well into the winter. I was hopeful initially that we could maybe have some larger tents outdoors, but I think we may be limited to 400 square feet. This actually came from the architecture firm that is managing our capital project. So that's a 20 by 20 tent. And even with that, we need approval from SED, as well as our local fire code official. Also, it must conform to state building code. Construction documents need to be submitted to New York State. Fire access roads must be provided. Certification, code of compliance, and approved testing laboratory must be submitted to SED and the local fire code official. So as you can see, it's not as straightforward as we thought. This doesn't mean we cannot proceed and try to erect some tents on our property. Michael Twardy and I believe we definitely have the property. However, the process seems to be a bit more involved than we initially thought, and we will continue to explore this and report back to the board. But it is certainly a goal of the districts to have more outdoor space. We do have the pavilion, of course, which is a great space. We are installing wireless access points out there, which will help. If everything goes well, hopefully we can have some tents around the property as well. Ms. Callow, the next slide. The third subgroup was the academic schedule group. And I think Sarah mentioned this earlier, but New York State is requiring that all schools submit plans for three different models. The first is an in-school model. The second is remote learning, which is what we had in the spring. And lastly, we need a hybrid schedule, all to New York State Ed by July 31st. However, they just released today that they are giving us a 1-week extension. Many districts are struggling with this deadline. plans are in draft form still, and certainly we're able to submit. But I think many people will take advantage of the 1-week extension, and I do plan to as well. Dusty, the next slide, please. So let me go through each model with you. The full-time in-person model. It's good and important for everyone to know that school administration and Tetra Tech architects and engineers analyzed every square foot of instructional space in our school. The goal was to determine precisely how many students and staff can be present while maintaining social distancing guidelines. The architects will provide us with detailed floor plans, and it will visually show everyone how many students. But the classrooms, we have 3 basic variations of classrooms. Our middle school rooms are the biggest, and we believe they can accommodate 16 to 17 students each, along with at least 2, possibly 3 staff members. There's a mid-size room that I believe is a little over 800 square feet. And I believe, if my memory serves me correct, that they can accommodate approximately 15 students. And then we have one smaller version of a classroom that we also believe can accommodate 13 to 14 students. Those plans will be created by the architects, and they will be included in our formal plan, and everyone will have access to that. But in this analysis, what we believe at this point in time is that we can have a full in-person model, and we can invite all of the Garrison students, K through 8, back with social distancing and with all the safety guidelines in place. Dusty, the next one. However, that being said, we need to make some adjustments and modifications. It will not look like September 2019. September 2020 will need to change to make this possible. So let me go grade level by grade level. Kindergarten, initially, we thought 1 classroom could potentially accommodate the grade level. I think the maximum in that room was 14. However, registration, which is pretty typical at the kindergarten level, has been increasing over the past 2 weeks. More and more at this point, we think we would need to do one of 2 things: either go to a half-day kindergarten program, which is allowable. That would be half the students attend in the morning. Then our buses would bring them home, and then pick up the other half of the students to attend afternoon kindergarten. There is one other option, which would be to relocate our music room and use that as a second kindergarten classroom, split the class between the original kindergarten classroom and the music room. I'm not crazy about this idea because, losing music I think is a big loss. But it is certainly something that's on the table, and we're going to explore it further as we track the kindergarten registration numbers. And a final decision will be made shortly. In grade 1, the plan is to have our students in 2 classrooms. They would be adjacent rooms. All first grades have an aide, and the teacher and the aide would need to float back and forth between the classrooms. We're also looking at setting up a virtual connection where students could see the teacher on screen, even if they were in the adjacent room. Also, we're doing more inclusion this year where our special education staff, our AIS teachers, would be spending more time in the classrooms. This also would help because there would be times where you would have 2 teachers and an aide, but that would not be all day long. In grade 2, we're looking at that same model. Based on today's numbers, we would need to split 1 class into two different classrooms. We have rooms located side by side, and the teacher and the aide would float back and forth. Our best thinking for 3rd grade is the library space. Anyone that has been in the library recognizes that it is probably at least 2, if not 3 classrooms in size. It is long and more of a rectangular shape, but we do believe it will comfortably accommodate the entire 3rd grade. There would also be a teacher and an aide present. And the other advantage of the library is it opens to a beautiful courtyard, and there could be plenty of outdoor time for that class. Dusty, the next slide, please. Moving on to grade 4. In fact, let me group these all together. 4 through 8, you see that all students are in 2 sections. And right now, based on current enrollment numbers, we believe they all could fit in classrooms. And 2 classrooms also with 2 teachers, a teacher in each. So we're also thinking for the middle school, which in the past, of course, is departmental, and students would switch classes. We are very seriously considering having only the teacher switch. The students would remain in a classroom. They would be given breaks, as needed, but the teacher switching, we believe, would be a safer approach. Dusty, next. The next required model that we need to submit to state ed is a 50% hybrid model. You have a pretty good visual here, and I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but what you see is the entire school divided into 2 groups. And on Monday and Tuesday, group 1 would be in school, attending school in person. On Wednesday, that same group would be home, learning online and synchronously. Then on Thursday and Friday, that group would remain home and learn asynchronously. And the reason for that is, if you look at the bottom row, group 2 on Monday and Tuesday are learning asynchronously at home. Wednesday, though, they are learning synchronously along with the groups actually would be combined. But then on Thursday and Friday, group 2 would be in school. So basically, to sum it up, you have 2 days in school, 3 days home. And out of the 3 days home, 1 day will be synchronous learning, 2 days asynchronous learning. So that is far from ideal, but many districts, in fact, almost all districts are forced to implement this type of model. Garrison is one of very few districts that has the square footage to even consider bringing all children back. Next, please. The other schedule is basically where we left off in the spring. It's remote learning model. This is if Governor Cuomo issues an executive order and closes schools like he did in the spring, we would have no choice but to be in this model. Our thinking remains the same. We did learn a lot from the experience, and we're trying to learn from what we did well as what we need to do better. We still hold to that the younger children it's more of a challenge for them to learn online or by looking at a computer screen. And so we think the time frames that were established by the end of last year are very good benchmarks. Where we see a big opportunity for improvement is sending home or having parents pick up instructional materials for all of the Garrison students if we were to be in a full remote learning model. And what I mean by that, just to give an example, let's take a 3rd grade class. Our teacher would create bins for ELA, for math and science and social studies. Our special area teachers, Mr. Young, for example, would have an art bin, and we would either deliver them to families or maybe set up a system where families could drive through the school and pick them up. And then students would have learning resources, learning materials at home. And they would get a break from screen time. There would still be, of course, some synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, but I think this would dramatically enhance the experience and make it much more effective. Next. So the final slide is just to summarize next steps. On this slide, you will see I adjusted. We now have until August 7th. I may not need until August 7th, but it is good to have an extra week to submit the reopening plan to state ed and make sure it is accurate and what we want it to be. Governor Cuomo did announce that he'll make a decision on opening school somewhere between August 1st and August 7th. Of course, he could on August 7th plan to open school. The virus could get worse over the following 2 weeks, and that could all change. Our job is to be ready to shift and be able to handle any one of those three models that I just described. A final detailed summary of the Garrison reopening plan will be published and shared with all no later than August 14th. So there'll be two versions. There'll be the version that goes to New York State, that, by the way, is a public document, but it'll be a very dense, I think about 80+ page document. My goal is to create a summary document. I'm thinking more around 15 to 20 pages that would be more user-friendly for parents, students, and staff. But everyone would have access to both. Both will be posted on the website and sent out to parents. Lastly, I just need to give big thanks to our task force members. They gave up a lot of their summer time. I really appreciate the insight. When we weren't meeting, people were still working. They were, polling people. They were doing research. And every time we gathered, they came to the table prepared to work and with great ideas. And for that, I am very grateful to all who participated. And that is the end of the slideshow. And I would welcome opening it up to any questions or conversation that you may have.
Carl, it's David here. I want to just get a better sense of the possibilities and the potential of outdoor education. Let's assume that the weather is mainly cooperative in September and October. Is it possible to have a predominantly outdoor system during those months? I mean, I don't know whether you need a tent for every class or whether you have the Wi-Fi capability to do outside classes, but I have the sense that a lot of parents would be much more comfortable with outdoor classes if it's possible. And so let's stipulate that the weather is going to cooperate for those 2 months anyway, for the most part. How much outdoor stuff can we do?
That's a great question, David. And I had a faculty meeting earlier this week, and I will tell you that everyone is on board with being outdoors as much as possible. What I don't think is realistic is to spend 6 or 7 hours outdoors, and that may be possible on certain days. I know there's a big interest in the forest and utilizing that amazing resource that we have. I can see phys ed every day, weather permitting, and unless you have heavy rain, I'm sure Patrick Beckley will be outdoors with our students. Recess will always be outdoors, but instructionally, I think your main question is instructionally, how much can we do? And I think quite a bit. And I know there's a strong motivation and desire on the part of our staff to be outdoors. And of course, we know the research supports that it is safer. So it's certainly a valid request from parents, but I can tell you, the staff agrees. We're all in agreement on that. But as far as access to things such as access to bathrooms, being able to, you can bring sanitizer, but, being able to wash your hands, I think there will always be times where we will need to be in the building, but I think we should maximize outdoors as much as possible. Yes, Sarah?
Matt, go ahead, please, and then James.
I guess I'll comment and then maybe a more specific question. I want to open my comment by saying how grateful I am for the extraordinary work that Mr. Albano and the task force has done. I think it's been creative and thoughtful and deeply well-intentioned with the interest of the students and teachers at heart and the families in the community. So my comment is not in any way meant to be a criticism of any kind, but I also want to sort of say in public that while I deeply appreciate all of the incredibly powerful arguments for returning to school in person, arguments that I embrace and share, pedagogical arguments, academic arguments, childcare arguments, safety arguments, I worry that, and this is much bigger than the Garrison district, this is a state problem and a national concern, that 6 months from now, I don't know how we can look in the mirror or go to bed at night knowing that the sense of urgency that we all feel right now for these really important reasons led to perhaps the death of somebody in our community. So I just speaking, I don't think I could sort of not say that publicly, that grips me deeply, even as I recognize how absolutely vital it is to try our best to go back. And so with that in mind, if we're going back, I think the more we can push for creative thinking, like what David brought up, and importantly, a lot of the things you said, Carl, about the health measures. I think that we really need to, as a community, change our culture. For example, we've all been complicit. I certainly have with my kids about sending them in when maybe they're a little bit under the weather. That's part of our culture. It's part of the American culture. We can't do that. You know, we have to be really disciplined as parents and as community members that we don't send people in. And that's just one example. So this is sort of me saying to all of my fellow citizens of Garrison that we're all in this together and we're about to sort of be in a pod together. And I think we really have to not just say that rhetorically, but really, really take that to heart. My biggest concern can be summarized and then I'll shut up. But this feels like a massive public health experiment with teachers and children as the guinea pig. My hope is that it works, but that's a pretty high stakes experiment. And I hope that we as a state, if we're diving into this, and again, this is way bigger than Garrison, I hope we're going into that with our eyes open and we recognize just how high the stakes really are for all of us as we do that. So now I swear I had a question buried in there somewhere. Oh, I had a question. Is there I may have missed this, and thank you for letting me pontificate and eat up everybody's time a little bit there. Is there a way to do staggered arrivals? It strikes me that one of the places where we're most prone to violating social distancing would be in the morning and afternoons, so that people could really spread out when they're coming into the building.
Matt, that you make a great point. Michael Twardy, Lou Coglietto, and I spent a lot of time just walking the grounds, looking at of course, I haven't seen the traffic patterns, but Michael knows them well and has explained them to me. We also met with all of our aides and those who are responsible for arrival and dismissal, and we are convinced that we need to stagger it. We just don't have all the details for you this evening, but for example, what we're thinking of is parent drop-offs, maybe starting that very early. It seems like a good number of parents would not opt to use our transportation, would be willing to drive. They may appreciate, in fact, being able to drop off the children earlier. They can get to work earlier. And we would first receive those students, and that would be more of a steady flow instead of, when a bus unloads, as there's heavier traffic there, but we can have drop-off stagger in first is our thinking right now. And then the buses, which would be, at about 1/3 capacity. We're estimating a 66 passenger bus probably would only have about 20 students in the model that we're proposing. But they would, of course, have to enter and socially distance right from the lineup at the gym entrance and all the way to class. The teachers put one routine that was not in place in the past was, children were allowed to go directly to the classrooms. Our teachers, I believe, are going to be willing to pick up the students and escort them to the classroom to ensure that social distancing occurs. So I got to tell you, I'm very impressed. The staff here is completely invested in this and on board. And I've received tremendous cooperation from everyone. And I mean every employee in Garrison. So I think that's very doable. And we'll have a detailed plan that'll be communicated with all.
James?
Well, I don't want to go after Matt. He's so damn eloquent. Takes a lot for a poet to feel like runner-up in the pontification land. So
Everyone will get their turn.
yes. You know, as a fellow guinea pig, I'm quite aware of the risks, you know, that people are taking, and I think it's very important to do everything that Matt's talking about. It's very important for the community to realize their role in this, and that's the role of collaborator, right? We're collaborating, we're working together to make sure that the the best outcome can happen. Certain things are out of our hands, but what is in our hands is our behavior and how we try to prevent the spread of this virus. And it's really I think it's within our control to minimize. I was thinking of the courtyards as a outdoor education space. Is there access to both courtyards from neutral areas? I know that you get through the main courtyard through the library. Is that correct? Is
Yes.
that the only entrance point, or is there another one?
Every courtyard needs at least 2 means of egress, James.
Right.
So you have the doors off the main hallway and then the doors from the library.
All right. So my thought here is that freestanding tents have to follow certain protocols, right? But outdoor space is just outdoor space, right? If you're using outdoor space for an outdoor experiment, an outdoor class, or a class that you step into, it's not a freestanding structure that you're occupying for 6 hours or whatever, correct?
Yes.
So that is not, doesn't have the same regulations. And I'm wondering if we can put a cover over the courtyards, whether that would be a plausible way of, in case there's, inclement weather. So that's just a thought. But thank you everybody for working so hard on, conceptualizing these issues. The use of outdoor space might answer the need for, let me ask the question, would the use of outdoor space allow for all-day kindergarten if that's the way you wanted to go? Or is that a personnel issue?
It's a good question. I think look, the weather, we won't have perfect weather, but as David pointed out earlier, typically the fall weather is cooperative, right? But you do have to be prepared if they have heavy rain to have the indoor space and to be able to social distance in the indoor space. So with the kindergarten, if the numbers continue to increase, and every day there seems to be an uptick, we have that option of the music room. That seems like the only available classroom. I mean, after that, then it's the gymnasium, which I feel very strongly about not losing the gymnasium because what our children will need most of all is movement. When you're forced to sit in rows and in one place for a long period of time, especially the younger children, but really K through 8. I really think that gymnasium, and there is plenty of space. So if Patrick Beckley could not get outdoors, there are certainly many activities he could do in that gym. So I think we need to preserve it. I'd like to preserve the music room as well. And that is a tough call. But full day kindergarten is also valuable.
Just want to ask a follow-up question to James, though. In terms of the plans that we submit to state, we need to prove we have space for these children in a either indoor tented place. We can't say we're keeping them outside as our SED plan.
Right.
Correct.
You can't tell the state, and then we're doing something with them sometime, right? I get it.
We can't tell the state that, well, we have, 5-year-olds that we plan to keep somewhere outside indefinitely.
So the half-day kindergarten, is that a space pressure or is that a staffing pressure or both?
That is a space.
Okay. All right. That's all. Thank you.
Jocelyn?
Okay, now you can hear me? Yeah. Yeah, oh, great. Okay, I had a question. I have 2 questions, but the first is for those, I think there was 39% or so, or 29% who said they don't feel comfortable sending back to school. Should it be hybrid or fully online. So I'm curious for those families that make that decision, will they be able to have access to online or distance learning, even though there will be classmates and teachers and faculty in the school?
That is a very important question, Jocelyn. I participated in New York State Ed's regional meetings. Before they produced the guidance, they met in all the regions throughout the state with school administrators and school leaders. And I posed that question. Right now, under state ed law, it is not required. If we reopened, there is no requirement to provide education. However, I think there is a moral obligation for us to consider if parents were not comfortable sending their children for whatever the reason is. I believe we have a responsibility. The big question is, what do you provide? And how do you provide quality if the teachers are teaching full time? And the model I described, there are some teachers who are already shifting back and forth between a classroom working with a paraprofessional. To also ask them to deliver a quality instructional program for children that are home, I think would be very challenging, to say the least. So we are exploring different options. I know there's some discussion, around the area to use some state-approved, virtual learning companies. I am in the process of exploring that. There would be an expense attached to it that I would certainly have to bring back to the Board of Education. I also asked Ms. Hutter to closely examine our budget and our fund balance. As all of you know, I'm sure, fund balance is there for emergencies. And, in my judgment, if there ever was an emergency, it's the pandemic that we're in. But we also, of course, have to be mindful of, keeping the district, sound financially, and we don't know what the future will bring. So that will be an important discussion. And I don't have all the details now, but I will come to you with some proposals within a week or two.
Thank you. I wonder, can I do my quick follow-up? I have two, or should we go to David or Madeline?
Go ahead.
I don't mind
Finish up.
going around. Okay, the second one is just, I'm wondering if we do go fully online, if that's the decision either by the governor or by us as a school, as a district. I'm sure this is not ready yet, but perhaps perhaps it already is understood. What ratio of synchronous versus asynchronous learning may happen, whether it's elementary or middle school, or is this just still under discussion if we were to have to go fully online when we open?
Well, there was a slide that I showed. There needs to be one thing we learned from the last experience is that we needed to do more with synchronous learning. So if children are home, and if we're forced into that model for whatever reason, children need to stay connected. They need to be connected with our staff, with our teachers, our counselors, but they also need to be connected with one another. And that is not done asynchronously, it's done synchronously. So, right now what we are proposing is, synchronous learning, and I'm looking at the remote learning, between 60 and 80 minutes for K and 1.
Guy, sorry, I didn't realize those numbers were for synchronous. I presumed
Yes.
they were maybe for not, that's actually a fair amount.
Yeah, and yes, that's what we think would be appropriate. I mean, it's something that's open. I'm open to some discussion on it, but this evolved. Those timeframes evolved over time in the spring. We learned some lessons. I think, and we listened to parents and listened to students. And for me, this looks just about right.
Before we go to David, who had a follow-up, Courtney or Madeline, do you have any questions?
I have two questions. First, thank you all for putting this together, especially the task force, Mr. Albano, and the staff that worked on it. First, I want to echo, I agree with Matt, well said. I think we are all we all have the same concern, or at least I do as a parent. So if we go with this all in-person model, my question is, what will trigger moving promptly to an all remote model? Let's say if there's an uptick, or we see that a couple of students or the staff test positive, where's that line? What's that trigger that will close down the school and we all go remote? That's question number one. And question number two is, are there any special accommodations for any high-risk students?
Madeline, would you repeat the second one? Are there special accommodations for?
Are there any special accommodations for high-risk students, students with asthma, students as defined high risk for the CDC?
Mm-hmm. So the first answer, the obvious one is, of course, the governor could have us go to a full virtual model. But if we're allowed to open and there is an outbreak, what we are told by the law and by state ed at this point is that we need to work together with the Putnam Department County of Health, and they will give us guidance. So my understanding is, if a staff member tested positive, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire school would need to close. They would, our goal is to, with this model, is to try to keep students in cohorts as much as possible, right? And not have them interact with other students. Same for staff. So I think the contact tracing that would occur immediately after identifying someone who's infected, after that contact tracing, I believe we would receive guidance on whether or not we should close. I do believe I have the authority as superintendent to close at any time, but certainly the Department of Health could say close. Now, I personally will always err on the side of caution. I think even if we were uncertain, I probably would make the call to close until we felt very confident that we could safely reopen. So I hope that answers your first question. And then accommodations for students, and this, there is guidance on this from the Department of Health in New York State. What has always been in place through ADA for students as well as adults, we have to make reasonable accommodations. So for example, wearing a mask all day, and there have been a few days here where I've had a mask on for the majority of the day, and it's difficult. It is. And in speaking with our school nurse, Ms. Stephans, we clearly agree that we need to build in mask breaks. If a child has asthma, they may need double the number of mask breaks. We're fortunate we have a good number of paraprofessionals in the school. So for example, that could be one accommodation where the child gets more frequent breaks, is able to walk outside, take the mask off, get some fresh air, and then return. So that's just one example, but I really think we would have to take it on a case by case. Certainly if a parent brought us a recommendation, for example, from a pediatrician, with reasonable recommendation, request, and that's what I would suggest if someone does have a concern. So if a parent wants to send their child to school, but there is some health condition, I would welcome getting a recommendation from the pediatrician as to what is the best way to accommodate the child.
What if the recommendation for children is that I guess this falls under Jocelyn's question. If the children aren't supposed to be there, what's the law regarding children who are being advised not to? Madeline, I don't know if this falls under the umbrella of what you're asking. Children who are being advised not to attend at all.
Another good question, Matt. The basic law is that you receive 2 hours of home instruction daily. And even that, in my opinion, that's not really sufficient, but that's the minimum required by law. And again, what I would recommend is, allow me time. We have some possibilities. There are some districts who are really considering just having a camera in the room. And for those who are home, you know, have students log in and watch the lesson and follow along. I'm not a big fan of that because in my opinion, that's not going to be very engaging. You know, if there's roughly 5.5, 6 hours of total instruction, you know, there's a lot of downtime, as you know, in any given school day. To expect a child at home to you know, be watching a screen and you know, maybe pick up a 10 or 15 minute, you know, modeling of a concept or you know, a discussion, I just don't think it would be engaging enough. So I have some issues with that one solution. I mean, look, there are districts out there that are doing whatever they can because they don't have many choices. In Garrison, we have more opportunities and more choices than most.
David?
So echoing in my head is Matt's point about how we're all faculty, staff, students, our children, guinea pigs in a public health experiment. And in view of that, it's extremely, extremely important that we have accurate, detailed information about what's happening in this region, in Phillipstown, in Putnam County, what's happening with new cases of COVID. Now, my understanding is that our Putnam County representative, Nancy Montgomery, I believe is on the record as being dissatisfied with what the Putnam County health authorities are providing in terms of detailed information. I mean, she was quoted in the Highland Current along those lines, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is something that is of great concern to us. And I think that we should be clear. I think maybe we should ask for a meeting or a consultation with Nancy to see exactly what it is that she'd like that we're not getting. And then I think if necessary, we should make it clear to the folks in the health department if what Nancy is saying is valid and supported by evidence, that we should insist on the most detailed information. I mean, it's not a secret when somebody is diagnosed with COVID. It's not a secret when they go into a hospital. We should have a running awareness of what's happening in this region with this disease.
David, I agree with you. The Department of Health has been giving us weekly updates on active cases. As we get closer to a decision about reopening, I agree with you. I would welcome additional information. You know, but I haven't formally made that request, so I don't want to assume that they would not provide additional information for us. So I'm happy to do that. We have a representative that meets with our superintendent's group every week. And let me get back to the board on a request. I'll make a request for, you know, what is the best information you could start giving us regularly to help us make an informed decision.
I would suggest that, you know, one of the first steps should be to reach out to Nancy Montgomery and see what exactly she has in mind when she says that the health department has not been up to standard in terms of providing this information.
I will. Thank
you. Do any of the other board members have questions regarding the presentation? I know we're going to have a lot. Oh, Courtney, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Finish what you were going to say.
No, I was going to wrap it up. So jump in, please.
Only that we've emailed a little bit about this, but I think it's just always helpful to talk about it and maybe for public to hear of two things. One, what thinking about what the average school day looks like for these kids. I think it is really important to note how hard it is to wear a mask for hours at a time. What does recess, and I understand you don't necessarily know yet, but what does recess and lunch look like for the different students? For the most part, are they all eating in the classroom, outside time, playground equipment? And then my second question is related to adhering to IEP and 504 plans. and what guidance the state has given, and just making sure both in-person, hybrid, and remote, how our district is handling it, adhering
I think Courtney's
to
breaking up a little bit.
all of those requirements.
Carla, did you get that?
Sure, I think I got most.
Sorry.
Courtney, let me know if I don't answer fully. So the first is what are we doing about lunch and recess? And right now, the thinking is that students would have lunch in the classroom. We're working out coverages. Of course, staff also needs to be provided with a lunch break. So it may require some additional, we're thinking maybe hire some everyday subs, but we are thinking that we need more people for supervision. Of course, in the past, you had several grades grouped together in the cafeteria, but we think we would keep them separate. In the rooms, they are 6 feet apart, allow them to eat lunch, and then go outside for recess, and observe social distancing outside. Right now, the thinking is, yes, allow them to use the playground equipment, but again, additional staff to remind children, if you are, hanging on the jungle gym or on a swing or whatever it is, that, and some of our children play first and then eat. But we would have to insist that there's a rigorous hand washing that goes on after you play before you sit down and eat your lunch. So all of that requires people, and I think more people than we've had supervising that process in previous years. So it could be hiring some additional aides later, but right prior to the school year, later this summer, and I'm thinking one of our August meetings, or potentially permanent subs. And we actually have a posting, and we're going to start interviewing and just see if we can have some people working on a day-to-day. My own personal thought behind this would be to have 3 or 4 subs, even if we don't have people out those first few weeks of school, to have 3 or 4 extra substitutes come in every day, just to make sure we can settle into all of these routines safely. Okay, now the second question with special education and 504, the guidance we're getting is that all needs to be honored. So, there should be no scaling back of any of those services. I will say there are challenges with providing some of those services virtually. And everything is less, in my opinion, less effective virtually. But we will do our best. But as far as, if your child gets a program that has resource room, 3 hours weekly, we need to provide that. And whatever, or speech, if it's, speech sessions, we will meet that compliance. Okay.
Courtney, did that get it?
Thank
All
you.
right.
Sorry about the internet.
That's okay. It's great to be in a van. I have one question for you, and this goes to the outdoor space question that we've discussed a bit. If we are inside, we have an old building. We will have a capital plan coming forward, but it's not ready yet. There's a lot of steps involved in that, of course, in terms of adding air conditioning and things. Have we checked to make sure all the windows open? Is there planning to have the windows open as much as possible? Are there any other plans for some of those older classrooms in terms of making sure they might be as close to an outdoor space as possible?
Yes, the guidance definitely calls for windows being opened as much as possible. I may promote Michael Twardy, who I know has taken a look at that, and we may be making some adjustments, but let's have Michael, if he's with us still, we'll ask him to respond directly. Just give me a moment.
Thanks.
Yes, he is still here. Michael, you're with us?
I'm unmuted now. There we go.
Michael, did you hear the question?
Yes. As far as the ventilation, all of our classrooms do have 2 windows that we were planning on opening, and with the exception of the kindergarten and music. But Mr. Albano and I have already spoken about having Putnam Window come in and adding 1 more window to the kindergarten and music room. We already have gone through every univent in the school and replaced the filters, vacuumed them out to ensure better airflow. All air handling units have also had their filters cleaned and they've been serviced. And what was the other question? There was a 2-parter there.
Would you add AC units, like window units, to any of the classrooms? Or is that recommended?
That was not part of our plan at this point.
And
Also, I think Matt was trying to ask a question,
Oh,
but
sorry.
we couldn't hear. No, but I think if you
He's
text
still
it to me,
talking.
Matt, I'll say it out loud or email it to me.
just to, and while you're finding that question, Sarah, the air window units did come up. You know, should we install temporary window units? And Melissa DeFonce has read guidance or presented guidance that really goes against that. You know, if you have air blowing in, it could potentially circulate. If someone is infected, it would probably do more harm than good.
Okay.
So as much as, it would be nice to have cooler air, it would be more comfortable. It probably would not be better as far as, a potential infection. So opening windows is really what we're aiming for.
And if I can just echo what Michael was saying, he's doing everything that the CDC requires. CDC looks to the ASHRAE engineering recommendation, and right now what they're recommending is a lot of outside air and changing the filters. So that's exactly what we need for the CDC and their recommendation of ASHRAE.
Thank you. And can I jump in? Sorry, before. I just wanted to say, Madeline, for everyone who might not have seen Madeline, she joined us last Saturday and has a lot of expertise in this area. Works for Mount Sinai in planning their facilities, and so knows a lot about this conversation in terms of healthcare and building. So thank you, Madeline, for jumping in there. Matt, can you speak now?
I don't know, can I? Am I being heard? Yes.
Thank you.
I was wondering if the library had windows that open and if the courtyard door in the library can stay open.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just, let me bring Michael back. Michael, we have another facilities question. Just unmute, Michael, if you're.
Okay, yep, I'm unmuted. Now, Matt was going in and out. All I heard was library.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Michael. I was just curious if the library has windows that can open and if the courtyard door in the library can stay open.
The library does have windows that open. It also has an air handling unit, which brings in fresh air. And yes, the door, many a times we have left those doors open just to bring in fresh air. So yeah, it's yes to all 3 there.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry to have you come on back and on and off.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
I'm glad to be here, guy. I knew there was going to be questions. I'm learning a lot too. And Madeline, nice to see you on the board.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. If we don't have any other questions, I think we're gonna, anybody else? Okay. Carl, you okay if I go ahead with the agenda now? All right. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, and I appreciate your honesty about what we know and what we don't know. For all the community members who are on, we're going to continue on through our consent agenda and some other items. as we move forward with this, take this time to put your comments in the chat and questions. When we get to public comment, as I said in the beginning, I will read them. And listen to the really exciting consent agenda as well. It's a good one. All right, so I'm going to go on to item 4, accept minutes. Dusty, jump in if I mess anything up, please. I will read the recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the July 8th, 2020 reorganizational and business meetings and the minutes of the special meeting of July 15th, 2020. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Dusty, would you like to call the roll?
Sure. Jocelyn Aposello,
Aye.
David Gelber.
Aye.
Did James have to leave the meeting? Do we know? I don't see him on.
He did. He had some internet issues. He's going to try to call back in a bit.
Okay. Madeline Julian. Thank you. Courtney McCarthy.
Aye.
Matthew Spicer.
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to personnel items, the consent agenda. I shall read the recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the personnel items, consent agenda items B through K as presented. I would like a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. And now, before we move on to a vote on this, I wanted to ask if Carl had anything you wanted to share with us regarding some of these wonderful appointments or any of the other parts on the consent agenda, and if anyone had any questions. Carl?
Sure. I would love to just briefly talk about the 3 candidates that the board will be appointing this evening. If we had an in-person meeting, you would be able to see them. I'm sure they would come up and love to shake hands, but I believe all 3 are in the audience, and maybe I could give you a quick background on each one and then promote them, and at least they can say hello and you can meet them virtually.
That would be great.
So the first person that I'd like to introduce is Miss Naomi Cook. Ms. Cook served as a teacher of AP Biology and Living Environment at Horace Greeley High School in Chappaqua from 2006 to 2015. She did take some time off for her family, but prior to her time in Chappaqua, she taught science at Humanities Preparatory High School in New York City. She has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Life Sciences from Cornell University and a Master of Arts in Science Education from New York University's Steinhardt School of Education. Ms. Cook, I believe, is an outstanding candidate. She'll be teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science, and I'm going to promote her so she could say a quick hello to our board.
Hi.
Hello, Ms.
Welcome.
Cook.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
We're excited to have you, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you joining us for our virtual meeting here. Your resume looks wonderful, and
Thank you.
in whatever format we're in the fall, I'm sure you'll be a success.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that. I'm excited to be starting.
All right.
Okay, Naomi, thank you, and we'll speak soon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. The second person I'd like to introduce is Miss Melissa Gartner. Miss Gartner will be our grade 6 through 8 Spanish teacher. This past year, she served as a teacher of Spanish and ENL at Pace High School in New York City. Ms. Gartner has a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish Language and Literature from Stony Brook University and a Master of Arts in Teaching Foreign Language and TESOL from New York University. So give me a moment and I will promote Melissa Gartner.
Hi.
Hello, Melissa.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, I like your backdrop.
Thank you. Much nicer than what's actually behind me. So.
Again, welcome. We're excited to have you. I would welcome you in Spanish, but unfortunately, I'm hoping my children, once they have your classes, will be able to teach me some. So
Yes, that's what I'm hoping too. Do this.
But welcome to our district and welcome to the area.
Thank you so much. So excited. Thank you.
Melissa, would you like to say something in Spanish?
Muchas gracias por tenerme aquí. Estoy muy emocionada para empezar en su escuela.
We're very happy to have you join.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, and our third candidate our third teacher that we're hiring this evening is Miss Stephanie Valvano. She will be teaching grades 6 through 8 social studies. Miss Valvano served as the middle school social studies teacher at the Carmel Academy in Greenwich, Connecticut. She has a Bachelor of Arts in History from State University at Albany and a Master of Arts in Middle and High School Social Studies Education from Lehman College. And I believe she is with us, and I will promote her to say a quick hello.
Welcome, Christine. Try to see if there you go.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Christine.
Very excited to be joining Garrison's community.
I'm very excited to have you. Thank you so much. Again, your resume looks wonderful. We're very excited to work with you. And any of the other board members, feel free to jump in, guys. I don't need to talk the whole time here. But thank you so much for becoming a part of our community.
I'm very excited.
Great.
Christine will be in touch soon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Do we have any questions from anyone on the consent agenda or anything else, Carl, you wish to add or speak to?
No, I think at this point, well, I mean, I would like to, of course, say a thank you to Mr. Cuglietto. Sarah, thank you for recognizing his efforts earlier. Lou, in his short time here, has really moved us forward. He's worked tirelessly, and I feel much more confident about the reopening due to his efforts, and he's been a great thinking partner and has worked well. So again, I wish him well with his family. He needed to leave for that reason, but I can tell Garrison was already growing on him, and he's enjoyed his time here for sure. What we are doing is approving me to serve as the interim principal. That may be a bit confusing for people, but it's important to know that is required by law. You must have a principal in place, and it is certainly okay for me to do both roles for a short period of time. Thankfully, I served as an elementary assistant principal and middle school principal for a number of years, so I have to kind of brush off my skills and get into scheduling and good stuff like that. But the work actually is helping me to gain a deeper understanding of the school, which is actually very helpful. So I'm enjoying that work and will continue to do it as long as necessary. And that's all I have to say about the personnel agenda.
Carl, I want to say one thing about that. Also, gratitude to Lou for what he did while he was here. But I've had some informal conversations with other board members, and we are just thrilled with the job that you've done in finding these new teachers. I mean, you didn't have a lot of time. You got a lot of stuff on your mind. COVID, you've got so much happening here and so much that you need to focus on. And in a very short period of time, you've come up with 3 candidates who, based on their resumes, are just extraordinary, and I think will make this school even stronger. And our thanks to you for doing it. My thanks to you for doing it.
It is a pleasure. I learned very early on that with human resources, it's a very worthwhile investment of time and energy to find the right people. I'm also pleased that so many highly qualified people are excited to work in Garrison. So we're fortunate in that respect that the school and the community has a wonderful reputation, and it attracts some high-level candidates. So I also am very pleased with all three that we're appointing this evening. I believe they'll serve our students very well over the years ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that, David. I would also like to point out on this agenda, the consent agenda, we have Mr. Keegan coming back to help with the master schedule, and I want to thank him for returning to fulfill that duty and hopefully help you out, and appreciate his time. If we're all set, I'm going to go ahead and move towards a vote. Let's see any other hands up. So, Dusty, would you call the roll for the vote, please?
Sure. Jocelyn Abisello. David Gelber.
Aye.
We'll skip over James for now. Madeline Julian.
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy.
Aye.
Matthew Spicer.
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
Aye. Thank you, Dusty.
Welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on now. We have no old business. We're moving on to new business. I have a request for approval of memorandum of agreement with the Garrison Teachers Association. I'm going to read the recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves a memorandum of agreement with the Garrison Union Free School District and authorizes superintendent to execute this agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any notes here, questions, Carl?
I'll just say that this is a memorandum of understanding with our teachers union to compensate some teachers for summer work. There was no formal stipend in the contract to compensate them for their work. So this is just for this summer only. And look, the teachers, as I said earlier, they've been wonderful. And they've been volunteering for many different task force and committees. So some of the work, though, we are compensating them, and I do think it's well deserved.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll move to a vote then. Dusty, would you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Epicello. David Gelber. Madeline Julian.
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy.
Aye.
Matthew Spicer.
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
I'm still muted here. Okay, thank you, Dusty. I'm going to move to approval of diversity training agreement. Read the recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education for the Garrison Union Free School District approves the agreement with April Equity Consulting for virtual diversity training and hereby authorizes the superintendent to execute said agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, David.
Seconded.
Thank you. Would anyone from the Diversity Task Force like to speak to this? Or I can turn it to Carl.
I will just say that I am looking forward to working with April. She was great. She came to our previous meeting, and I think it's a wise decision to have her on board with us as we, as the task force moves forward. And I look forward to having as many people as we are able to potentially attend when April is with us next week. So, thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's other questions or comments, we'll move to a roll call vote. Oh, Madeline?
I think this was asked before. Can the public or anyone from the community join these learning sessions, diversity training sessions? You're on mute, Carl.
My apologies. I will definitely confirm that, but I will make that request. I know it was asked this past Saturday. April and I just connected today, and I will see if we can have other people join. I think it would be a positive thing. So if she has no objections, we will open it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I think we're ready for roll call. Dusty?
Jocelyn Epicello.
Aye.
David Gelber.
Aye.
Madeline Julian.
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy.
Aye.
Matthew Spicer. Sarah Tormey.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Dusty. Moving on to item C, approval of search consultant. Read the recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves an agreement with district-wide search consultants for the purpose of conducting a search for a building principal for the Garrison School and authorizes its superintendent to execute said agreement. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I will, if Carl, if you don't mind, I can speak to this a little bit. The board had the pleasure of working with district-wise when we searched for our superintendent and appreciated their process. As we go into a search for a principal, given the timing and the fact that they just worked with us and sort of got to know our district, we felt it would be wise to return to them as they spent a lot of time listening to community forums and such and hearing about what the community values here. So I thought it was important to point that out. This is, of course, Carl's hire for the principal, but there will be an inclusive committee that has parents, teachers, board members on it, and we will be sending out more information on that soon. Carl, is there anything I left out that I should add about them? Or Court, anybody else want to add anything about district-wise?
I think it was a great summary. They're going to really help us, I think, expand the search, not only regionally, but statewide. And we'll make sure that it's well advertised and thorough. And I appreciate the board supporting this. I think they'll be very helpful in helping us find that right person for the next permanent principal.
Thank you. Do you have any other thoughts, questions, comments?
I would just add that I hope that we convey to them our interest in further diversifying our faculty and staff here, and that they conduct their search with that as one factor in mind.
Agreed. Thank you, David. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to let Dusty, I think we're ready for the roll call vote.
Okay. Jocelyn Apicello,
Aye. Sorry, couldn't find my mouse.
David Gelber,
Aye.
Madeline Julian,
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy,
Aye.
Matthew Spicer,
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Dusty. We'll move on to the agreement for school physician services. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Mr. Carl Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the agreement dated July 22nd, 2020, between the Garrison Union Free School District and Dr. Peter E. Gergley for school physician services for the 2020-2021 school year, and does hereby authorize the Board President to execute said agreement. Carl, is there anything you want to add to this?
I will just add that I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Gergley, and I know he's been with the district for many years. This is a $500 increase over the previous year, but by comparison, it is still a very reasonable expense for a school physician. And I know he's a very established physician, and I also would think this year his consultation will be more important than ever. So we appreciate having him stay with the Garrison district.
And I just realized I forgot the motion. Sorry, Dusty. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Sorry about that, Dusty. If there's any other questions or comments on this agreement? Yes, madam.
I just really don't understand the scope. So is his scope to check any of the students, or is it to assist as a resource? Like what's his contract?
His contract is attached, but I don't have it in front of me right now because I'm hosting the meeting. But let me see. Primarily, Madeline, it's consultation for the district. So this is very standard. All districts do have a school physician for consultation. He could also perform examinations if we needed that from him. He could also review medical records for students as well as employees if we requested that from him.
So it's a standard scope, nothing new with the COVID pandemic.
Well, for example, if we needed consultation, if there were, a situation where someone was infected, or if someone had an underlying health condition and we wanted to get a second opinion from Dr. Gergely, he would provide that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? All right, I think we're ready to move to the roll call vote. And Dusty, I realized I probably should have clarified this earlier, especially for Madeline, I'm sorry. But with the roll call, you have the option to vote aye, to vote nay, or to abstain during the roll call, correct?
That's correct.
Just in case, I'm sorry, Madeline, I didn't make that clear initially. Hopefully it came through in some of the other training, but my apologies. Okay, go ahead. Let's go ahead with the roll call.
Jocelyn Apicello,
Aye.
David Gelber,
Aye.
Madeline Julian,
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy,
Aye.
Matthew Spicer,
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Dusty. Now we're going to move to item E, approve budget transfer number 9. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl Albano, Superintendent, hereby approve budget transfer number 9. The details were in your packet. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Do I have any questions, comments, thoughts? Carl, do you have anything you want to add further on this transfer?
Ms. Hutter can also speak to it, but I mean, this is pretty basic. It was an unusual year. There was some changes in personnel and some unexpected things related to the close down in the spring due to COVID. So this is really just transferring funds to balance our budget for the past year.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any hands up for questions, comments. Okay, we're going to move to a roll call vote then.
Jocelyn Apicello,
Aye.
David Gelber,
Aye.
Madeline Julian,
Aye.
Courtney McCarthy,
Aye.
Matthew Spicer,
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, this brings us to the public comment section of tonight's agenda. Is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 3220 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of the policy. If you have questions about a particular student or personnel, please address that through the chain of command and to the superintendent's office. As I said in the beginning, I will read the questions from the chat. We will not respond immediately. We would like to make sure we vet and give you proper information, but we will respond to you and try to answer all your questions. With regards to reopening, we don't have all the answers yet, but we are doing our best. Okay, I see questions already here in the chat. So I'm going to read this. We have a parent of a rising 7th grader. The question is, can the building be outfitted with the UV light or whatever the lighting is to help reduce transmission possibilities? I know there's a capital improvement plan in place, and could some of the funding be used to improve ventilation? I think that's something we would probably want to get back to them on with return to the UV light. Carl, and let me see if I have another comment here. Okay, I'm going to give it another minute or two in case anyone, I see we still have some attendees. If anyone wants to add a question, share their thought, please know you can also email the board and Mr. Albano at any time. As you may have noticed from tonight's agenda, Mr. Albano will be very busy as the superintendent and principal and reopening of our school. But please, if you have questions, do reach out. And if you wish to contact the board, please use our board email addresses. They are listed on the GUF's website, and we will get back to you from there. Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments.
Sarah, there's a Q&A question.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Are there plans to do outside classes using tents and our existing areas? Okay, so I'm going to let Carl address this briefly, as it was addressed extensively earlier in the presentation. And also as a reminder, this presentation, all board meetings, the recording is posted for people to watch later. But Carl, do you want to quickly address this, seeing as we talked about it earlier? I think we had a late attendee come in.
Sure, Ms. Mulligan, it is very much under consideration. What we've learned, though, in doing some further research, there are a lot of requirements around installing tents around the property. So we actually started to get some pricing. We very much like the idea. And however, we have to work with the architects, with the fire department, and also approval from state ed. So it's not as simple as we thought, but we will still be looking into that. In addition, we absolutely embrace outdoor learning as much as possible. The board, many of our board members have made that recommendation, but I can tell you the staff is making plans. They've been working hard all summer, and they very much intend to be outdoors as much as possible.
Thank you, Carl. And to also add, we will be using our courtyard spaces as well. Okay, I don't see any other now Q&As or chats. Again, if you have questions after the meeting, please reach out to our email addresses. I'm going to move on to board member comment at this point. And I think last time we went in alphabetical order, starting at the top of the alphabet, and it was suggested that perhaps we reverse it. Dusty, can I do that without an official? Okay, so I've said enough this evening, and I'm on the bottom of the list, so I will just say thank you to everyone for all their hard work on all the plans, and thank you for all the discussion. I'm going to move to Matt now. Matt, do you have anything you'd like to add this evening?
No, I think I said everything I would have said in this slot earlier, so thank you. I'll pass it on. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go to Courtney.
I'm having some lighting issues, so at the risk of doing a spooky Halloween lighting, I will keep it short. Thank you to Mr. Cuglietto for all of his time and work, and I wish you well, and thank you to everybody who worked on the task force to put this plan together, and look forward to hearing what comes next.
Okay, we're going to go to Madeline now. I know it's your first time joining us, so don't feel like you have to say too much.
Well, I do have to say thank you to Carl. I've been, it's been hours since I've been on the board, and I do recognize all the hard work that he has put in to this presentation, to the whole community, and is working on now also being a principal and the superintendent. So thank you for all your hard work. I look forward to working with you and the rest of the members. I'm so excited to be joining this team, and it's going to be a tough year, but I think it'll be fine. On a very side note, we have been installing a lot of tents. I do work for Mount Sinai. So whatever resource or information I can help out with, if that's a way that we're going to go, it can definitely help out as needed.
Thank you. Tent expertise is welcome, it sounds like. David, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do, Sarah. The situation that we're in right now, I think, obligates us to do the very best job we can in encouraging the participation of our community in the work of the Board of Education. That's something that I think we genuinely want to have happen. And I think that maybe one of the things that would be helpful is that on a week where we have a meeting, perhaps on the Monday preceding the meeting, we could send out a message to all the community, to the entire community, to parents and others, to say that the meeting is going to happen and that we expect to be talking about X, Y, and Z at the meeting. I mean, just anything that encourages people to take part in the meeting, I think is a real plus, especially now, given all the anxieties that the current situation causes our community, folks in our community. So that's the suggestion. Monday before the Wednesday, an announcement of the meeting and a statement of what we're going to be discussing on Wednesday night.
I think that is a very interesting idea, and I will do what I can to work with Dusty and Carl to make that happen in whatever format we can do, through email, posting. Of course, the agenda is posted publicly, but making sure people understand how to access it is a different thing, which is I think what you're referring to, David, too. And I'm sorry to jump in and Justin, we're going to get to, but I just want to also add that people will have an opportunity, or parents will, at those coffee talks, Carl, which we did not mention tonight, that are coming up, the virtual happy hour, coffee hour, probably not happy hour, I guess, with the superintendent. Starting next week would be a good place to bring questions, thoughts as well. I'm sure those will be good nights. Now I'm going to move on to Jocelyn.
No comment. Thank you.
Jocelyn. David, did I cut you off? You're still unmuted. Did you have more you wanted to add? Or?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure. All right, then. That ends board comment. We do not have an executive session tonight, guys. I know. Exciting. So, yeah, Courtney, you're really looking like you're in a horror show there. We are now going to move to adjournment. There's nothing else. That's all I had to say, right? No executive session. We're good. No motions there. So the recommended action here is resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the special meeting of July 24th, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Yay. Thank you all. And I think that's good night. We'll be in touch.
Can we do a quick roll call to approve the adjournment?
Sorry. I was too excited to leave, and that has nothing to do with all of you.
Jocelyn Epicello.
Aye.
David Gelber.
Aye.
Madeline Julian.
Aye.
Matthew Spicer. Sorry, I went out of order. Courtney McCarthy.
Aye.
Sarah Tormey.
My apologies, Dusty. It's not that I wanted to leave all of you so fast. I'm just a little.
And yet,
all right. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Dusty. Thank you all.
thank you, Carl. Thank you, Dusty.
Have a great evening.
Thank you for the special meeting, everyone. Appreciate it.